here with James and Joel from Gearbox to talk about Borderlands, the pre-sequel. Guys, we're going to the moon.
That's right.
Thanks so much for stopping by and showing us some footage. Now, let's just start off by talking about the setting. Obviously, the moon is going to be a fun place if I know you guys. Tell us a little bit about why you picked to land us there.
Well, I think people have been wanting to go to Elpis, which is the moon of Pandora, for a really long time. I mean, just looking at message boards and comments, people have been saying, when are we going to go to the moon? And when we first started working on this game with Gearbox, we thought, we need to go to this moon, we need to go to the Moonshot facility, and it came up with all of these awesome gameplay opportunities, like low gravity and an oxygen system that you can have up on the moon, which completely differentiates it from Pandora.
Right, and low oxygen, in the game it's referred to as Oz, is that right?
Yeah, basically because if you look at the screen, the O2 looks very similar to a Z, or as Joel would say, a Z.
Yes.
Yeah. So for a long time we'd call them O2 kits, but testers and designers would just thought they saw a Z, so it just became an Oz kit over time.
Neat. So what other kind of little things? I mean, you guys, that's one fun thing about this game, right? It's not shy to show its personality, to take chances, to have fun. I understand the whole voice cast is got Australian accents because you tried that first and it worked, right?
Yeah, so early on, Joel's team was putting temp VO into the game to kind of show how the missions flow. And they were trying to do like their version of an American accent, but with Aussie voices. And it was just awful. And we were like, this is what
we did a really good job.
I mean, no, you did great. You did great. But like, we thought this is exactly what this game needs to be. So obviously, there are certain returning characters that that will need to be voiced by the original voice actors. But
sure.
For the new characters, we tried as much as possible to stick to Australian voices.
Right.
Yeah, it works really well for the moon as well because it's a completely different set. There are these ex-DAL engineers, and having the Australian voice cast really, again, differentiates and makes it feel like a completely different culture up there on the moon.
Right.
It's actually pretty funny because when we were pitching ideas for what to tell and who the people are that were living on Elpis, some of the guys on Iron were like, well, maybe they should be like prisoners or convicts or cast away to a faraway land. I was like, yeah, that's right, because that's exactly what Australians would understand.
Yes, absolutely. Now, you touched on the characters briefly there, but let's talk about the new characters, the new cast that we're going to see here. What makes them stand out, unique? Why would people want to come back and play with these guys?
So the two characters that we're showing in the demo today are Wilhelm and Athena, and people probably remember these. Wilhelm was the first big boss that you fought in Borderlands 2. It was basically just like a head on a giant robotic body. But because this game is set in between Borderlands 1 and Borderlands 2, it's a prequel and a sequel, hence the name. It's kind of the origin story for Wilhelm and Athena. So in this game, Wilhelm starts out, he's just a man with some slight augmentations, but as you go down his skill tree, you're actually going to start turning him into the robot that you fought in Borderlands 2. So you're going to get this pneumatic arm, robotic legs, shoulder-mounted rocket turrets. It's pretty cool. That central skill tree is all about building him up to be the cyborg that he was in Borderlands 2. And I don't know if you want to talk about Athena.
Yeah, I mean, fans of Borderlands 1 will remember Athena because she was in the General Knox DLC, and back then she was just an NPC, but we had kind of laid out the groundwork that she was a very formidable fighter. And so she was kind of a fan favorite where people want to know what happened to her because, she employed you to help her tear down Atlas, which was like the largest gun manufacturer and also the kind of like power on Pandora. And so the question was like, what happened to her afterwards? And so we kind of want to tell some of that story. And she obviously has some really badass weapons on her that we thought fans would like to use also.
Badass weapons at the core of this game as well. So what new types of weapons are we going to experience? And what are you guys most excited about to deliver to the audience in that regard?
Well, I'm excited for people to get their hands on and feel what the low gravity gameplay feels like. We've got new weapons, we have lasers, we have this cryo elemental type which goes across the entire game, but the low gravity completely changes how the game feels. It's unlike any other shooter out there, any other first person game out there. You can jump these really high distances, you can see the players are jumping hundreds of feet at a time. And if you're really high, you can actually hold the crouch button and you actually butt stomp down onto the ground and you do this area of effect attack. Which can be really powerful, and the players can also add to their skill tree to make those more powerful. And we have a new piece of gear called the Oz Kit. Again, Oz Kit. But this allows you to breathe out in the atmosphere, do your boost, which is kind of like a double jump, and your ground pounds. But you also can add elemental damage to your Oz Kit, so you can actually jump from really high, slam down to the ground, and then freeze people, and they'll get frozen and procedurally shatter.
Did the way that you traversed the universe, did that serve as a basis for establishing the story, or did it come after you already knew that you wanted to do it that way?
When we started talking about what we want to do on Elpis, we knew that we wanted it to be very similar to Earth's moon, just because we're very fond of that sort of environment. And so,
have you been there?
To our moon? No, but I hear it's great.
Yes.
Some movies say there's monsters up there, so I kind of want to stay away from that.
Right.
But we had some ideas of like what it would mean to be there, and we want to kind of come true on those. So, but we also knew that if we're going to do like thin atmosphere to where you're having to worry about this, we didn't want it to be this annoying resource that you always had to deal with.
Right.
So we knew that we had to make it fun. You had to have easy ways to get it back, and that ties into OzKits and all these other systems that we're adding into the game.
Right.
Yeah, the really fun thing about doing a moon in a Borderlands game as well is we can deliver on these moon promises like low gravity and low atmosphere and kind of jump you around and feeling like an astronaut, but it is Pandora's moon, so it's not just this kind of desolate, crater filled environment. You'll see in this demo here, there's these methane plumes and there's liquid methane all over the place.
I think you mean methane.
Yeah. Or methane. It's fine.
So the player's going to be able to see like a moon which feels familiar but is also completely different, and a lot of unexpected environments that they're going to be able to experience.
And lastly, you briefly touched on the enemies as well. Talk about some of the diversity in the enemies and some of the new ones that we'll encounter in the pre-sequel.
Sure. Well, I mean, obviously we couldn't take the enemies that we have in Borderlands 1 or Borderlands 2 and just slap them on Elpis and then everyone just accept that. That'd be crazy. It wouldn't really feel very authentic. So, you know, we have different kind of human enemies. We have a very strong doll presence, and we have scavs that are very similar to bandits, but they behave differently. They have different accents. They have different attacks. We also have new kind of creatures like the Kragans, which are these sort of like quadruped rock beasts, but since it's a Borderlands game, they also have elemental varieties. So like you have ice monsters that also breathe fire on you, because that's a thing that we can do.
Of course. Of course. You can do a lot of things. You have done a lot of things. The franchise is going very well. Congrats on this latest one. It's coming out when exactly?
October 14th, 2014.